No, I mean, an IPO in the next 1 year?
Yes.
No, there's no chance. We'll have to have more history. I would say an IPO in 28 plus or minus, 2028 plus or minus. I think it's very unreasonable to think that we'll IPO in 25. I mean, it's not even possible. Not in the cards, not possible. We're not working towards that. So no, that I can confirm. A more logical time frame would be 28, like I said, plus or minus, a month, few months here and there.
Hi Vinay, hi Praveen. Very warm welcome to the morning brief. Vinay once again, Praveen for the first time. But very good to have you guys with us.
Thank you. Welcome to Akasa.
Thank you so much for having us around. Yes.
It's a pleasure. So, congratulations on the 2-year milestone, and a lot of other milestones have been achieved on the way. They've been two very good years actually. What would you say, looking back, are the 3 things that you're proudest of, and the 3 most bitter lessons?
So Anirban, I'm not great with these top 3, bottom 3, etc., kind of questions. First, I'd say there's really, no element of bitterness. Let me get that one, out of the way. I think we look at these last couple of years with great pride. We look at these last couple of years and feel extremely fortunate for what we have been able to achieve as a whole. I think, there are a couple of things that really sort of stand out. First and foremost is seeing, 4,000 Akasians hard at work with a corporate culture of togetherness, a corporate culture of values, a corporate culture that's sort of deep rooted in world-class safety. So being able to see that unfurl for me is one of the greatest sources of pride. And I'll just give you an example. So on the 19th of July, we had this, global tech outage. Just to give you a sense that Akasa did not cancel a single flight. And that to me was sort of the culmination of this, culture of dedication, but also culture of practice, this culture of training, right? I mean, these are things that you train for. And so, the culture that we're building with these 4,000 employees, for me, is the greatest source of pride to see people coming to work smiling, to see our flight attendants and our pilots and our mechanics and our security staff, coming to work with a sense of pride and purpose is fantastic. And then the other one is just to see the consumers' reactions, right? The consumers' reactions, whether it's our food, whether it's, we fly you because we know with Akasa we're going to get there on time, right? And obviously statistically average shows that we're India's most on-time airline. But the fact that our consumers are saying, oh, thank goodness for Akasa, we now have a choice that we didn't have. It's these 2 things that, are perhaps the most rewarding when we reflect on the last couple of years.
Right. Would you talk about the lessons then? Not the bitter ones, but the tough lessons that, you would want to work on.
So the good news is the way we planned this whole approach, right from the word go, it's been to the world inducting 20 aircraft in a matter of 9 months or so is really tough. And we thought the same when we built it on a piece of paper. But the very fact that there was so much of planning that went into it, and more importantly, we executed the plan, it really helped in our favor. I think that made a huge difference in terms of the lessons, in terms of what happened versus what we planned. Lessons learned, frankly, Anirban, there are several lessons that you can learn through the process, right? This business is all about getting better versus what you have achieved. And I think on that front, we have several lessons learned through the process. And it's all about continuous improvement as far as we are concerned. And with each passing day, the moment we look at every aspect of the business and say, we need to continuously improve, that's the best way you can be one of the best in what you do. So that's what we keep doing. That's what we keep discussing. We find ways and means to get better with each passing day, and that's the motto. with which we run this airline.
Right. One of the things that Akasa has done that you sort of also referred to is a lot of industry firsts. First airline to reach the 20 aircraft mark, first airline to be fastest to be of international, start international routes.
600 days of operations, yes.
Right.
On the 600th day of operation, we started on international
flight, right. The softer things like allowing pets, quiet flights, buy a seat adjacent to yourself and all that. So obviously you will say that you did not go for being an industry first, you were going for best practices and building an innovative airline. But are there some that you haven't achieved yet, and what do we expect in, say, the next 1 or 2 years?
There's none, there's no sort of silver bullet kind of, huge big ticket item that we have not, implemented and achieved that we know of today. But as Praveen said, we are a very sort of hungry organization to be better tomorrow than we were today. That's just, there's no sense of complacency. And so should you expect something different and new in the years to come? You should. It's not something we can articulate today. However, we want to continue just to be, more reliable. We want to continue to be better with our consumers and serve them even better. So we're India's most reliable airline today, but that doesn't mean we stop focusing, on being better and improving our, on-time performance. So the thought is, I think people just underestimate the singularity of focus of a very sort of generic line that says, run a good airline. That seems a very sort of passé kind of phrase, but that is exactly what we want to do. Just run a good airline, which means continue to be, more reliable, continue to delight our customers, make them happy, make them love us, focus on, on the foods. And you mentioned a few things, but our approach to our employees, the uniform of the flight attendant. So these are all things that we have to just continue to focus on. Encapsulating it all, we just continue to, run a better and better airline with every passing day.
Right. And I mean, if I were to go into specifics, the conversations I've had with you, even offline and others, your colleagues also, tech has been something that's been sort of a cornerstone for you guys. Are you, for instance, as tech savvy that you had sought out to be when you were a 2-year-old airline? I mean, I know that it's a sort of a broader question, but
I'll tell you, we are, and Praveen, can come in with his opinion. But for us, Anirban, if you remember our earlier conversation, it was tech, data, and analytics. It's a combination of those three, right? Tech is not just the front-ending software, whether it's web, mobile, but underlying tech is data and analytics that come with it. And absolutely, we are just as focused today on tech, data, and analytics as we were, right? So we started the airline with the concept of, consumer data that we were going to be, analyze, every single day. We started the airline with employee, pulse survey data that we're analyzing every single day. Certainly the more, visible tech is the web and mobile apps that we continue to invest in. I think what many people don't see is the investment we're making in technology related to, safety, the investment in technology related to, operation. You don't get to be India's most on-time airline without tech, right? Ability to follow flights, ability to react during irregular operations. And every day is an irregular operation. That comes with tech, right? And so that focus will continue. We've absolutely not implemented everything that we want to do, right? And what you're going to see next from a tech perspective is a lot to do with the sort of, consumer personalization. We want to be able to recognize you in real time.
Yeah, that was my next question.
That's correct. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we want to be able to recognize you as a consumer in real time.
And just to give you an example, not just the consumers, right? And when Vinay says consumer, it means the consumers in the form of a passenger, and also consumers in the form of the trade, and even the cargo freight forwarders.
Sure.
So we are probably the only airline across the world that actually started off our operations with the cargo system in place. So we went live with Smart Cargo so that the whole process becomes easier for the freight forwarders. In fact, in a very short span of time, we're also releasing an app for the freight forwarders.
Great.
So it just clearly goes to show there are areas or pockets of expansion when it comes to tech, which is on the passenger side. But what needs evolution is also on the cargo side. And we believe in focusing on all. And that's why the energy is spent around how do we get data. And it's all driven by the underlying fact that we're all data hungry all the time and love analyzing data, because I think data throws out a lot, and the analysis, outcomes, and the execution that you do post that is super critical. And that's how we want to drive this business, and that's how we will thrive. That's what we'll thrive on.
Will you be the only airline in India with an app for freight forwarders?
No, there is another airline that's already got the app live.
Okay.
We'll probably be the second.
Yeah. Okay. And stock question to you, since we're talking about tech, how do you incorporate AI in all this? And I'll be a little more specific. I mean, when you say customer facing, I'd heard this somewhere that Akasa eventually plans to make its app multilingual, maybe even, have a braille section for the differently abled. Are these something still on the anvil? And of course, my original question on how does AI come into all this, stitched into all this?
So these are all still very relevant. And it's differently enabled, so it's not one form of disability, but these are government mandates that are in place today that we must comply. So that's not something for the future. That's something that we have in place today. Of course, we'll continue to find ways to improve it. In terms of multilingual capabilities, as we expand internationally, these are just natural evolutions that will come from a language capability. So these are all in the works. From an AI perspective, I think there are multiple ways in which we are continuing to use AI, both from a customer-facing way as well as from a back-end perspective. And just sort of examples are ways in which our consumers will interact with Akasa through the use of AI, right? So historically, you get chatbots that consumers interact with, various companies, and these chatbots are based on very sort of specific, well articulated, but also restrictive query sets. For us, that's an AI solution that we're in the process of implementing. So you can get, much more sort of natural language capabilities in the ways in which consumers interact with, with us, that can learn over a period of time. And very similar queries come, by the way, it's not just consumers that have queries of Akasa, but our employees do as well. What is our leave policy? What is this? What is that? And again, we've got, and historically most companies have got these articulated through a series of Q&A, but that for us over time will move to an AI application. These are just examples.
Sure.
Right? There are many more.
Sure. And pardon my ignorance, but have we come to a stage where AI can be used in very core back-end functions like fleet management and revenue management? And is Akasa's model sort of given to using those tools?
So there are different forms of AI that I think have different levels of application. So for example, when you look at consumer choice modeling, dating back to the early 90s, people have used neural networks. Now, neural networks is this early form of AI that have evolved over a period of time. In fact, an earlier form of that would be a simple regression that learns over a period of time with different data sets. So to answer your question concisely, yes, there are, applications of AI today in perhaps not the same version or form of AI that people associate with,
large language models.
Large language models, but absolutely are learning models, but not large language related learning models, but data related learning models that are already being used.
By Akasa?
By Akasa through third party, it's not things that we've invented, but through third parties, because a lot of our tech comes from third parties, right? We go out and we pride ourselves in being able to onboard the best tech that's available in the world versus necessarily invent this ourselves. And so some of this is already embedded in the tech that we purchase.
Sure. Of course. Okay. This is something I've always wanted to ask. As a journalist, when we cover other sectors, the curiosity always is how is the workflow there, right? For instance, so I've always wondered, and this is a good question to ask you now that you're a 2-year-old airline with a fairly robust network and international operations that will, the sky is the limit for you. How more nimble-footed are you when it comes to choosing your next destination, be it local, be it domestic or international? And would you take me through the process of how does it happen? Is it usually, this airline is going there, so we need to compete? This is how some airlines work. The other is, Praveen just gives you a call and saying, hey, this is a destination we haven't reached yet. How come? And you say, yeah, let's discuss. And then there's arguments, etc. How does that really happen? Both of you, maybe.
No, I think with this one, I'll sit back and relax, and Praveen can answer. Because, obviously, as our Chief Commercial Officer, Praveen is responsible, amongst many other things, for our network design. And so he's the right person to respond.
Sure. So quite frankly, it's nothing but sticking to basics. In whatever we do, be it commercial operations, I think it just makes it very simple to execute, and you see the results automatically. The network that you see now and the destinations that you see now is an output based on analytics that runs in the background. So in the decision-making set or the data set that we probably have 70, 80 destinations with us.
So that you don't fly to yet.
Yes. So we analyze all this and you prioritize them based on several factors. Factor one, what's the competition like? What's been the historical trend? Pre-COVID, post-COVID, a lot of things have changed. How are the fares evolving in these markets? What's the kind of connection that we create out of these? Because let's face it, is it going to add incremental value to the network, or is it going to be a standalone?
And you have your international thing also at the back of your mind.
Absolutely. So those factors are extremely critical. And of course, we look at a channel mix. Where is the contribution coming from? Are we playing to our strengths? And we might as well play to our strengths. So the question of why Bombay today and a Bangalore tomorrow, or vice versa, is purely a reflection of your strength and playing to your strengths. And the moment you do that, it automatically becomes an easier factor on whether the network will turn out as positive as it wants, which is why you see us pretty much at par with competition on the performance metrics on the commercial side. And on the operations side, far superior, because the network, the way we build it, we also focus around making sure that there are enough turnaround times available. There is enough space available for us to turn these aircraft around. And that enables you to manage the operation side better as well. But largely, the 27 destinations that you see today, there is a lot more in the background. And the discussion or the debate that we keep having internally once the commercial team has decided is, why should we fly to X ahead of Y, right? And the classic...
Why don't you give me an example?
The classic, yes, that's what I'm coming to. And the classic example was Port Blair versus Srinagar, right? Because we secured the slots. The question was, which one do you go first with? And we chose Port Blair over Srinagar given the seasonality aspect. And that's when data plays its role. And none of us, quite frankly, emotionally influence decisions. Because emotional decisions only result in regret over a period of time. And that's been the learning all along across all of us in the organization. So it's all data driven. Port Blair went in first because the peak season for Port Blair was stronger than the peak season for Srinagar. And that's how we pick and choose which destinations to fly to. And of course, international is a completely different ballgame altogether. Again, seasonality plays a critical role. What also matters is what are the rights available, etc. We know a lot of markets are bilaterally constrained today, and the rights are already allocated. Some rights are used, some are not. So that has to go through its own process. Though you may have a subset of 20, 25 destinations, how you pick and choose and prioritize them eventually depends on the availability of slots in these international markets and the bilateral availability.
Got it. I'll come to bilateral in a bit. But also, I started my question with the word nimble-footed, with the adjective. So what we usually see is many airlines, they usually track, they actually, some of them mirror the progression that one airline takes. So the moment you go to the Kuwait, for instance, an IndiGo comes with its, muscle and pricing, etc. Then what do you do? I mean, do you have that in mind that, yes, we are going to a sector which is really, really lucrative and we are aware that competition comes. So do you have the pricing, the slots, everything at the back of your mind? Because this will happen.
So when you launch your route, Anirban, by definition, you need to realize that you're going to grow the market. Because any new announcement that comes through is a reflection of the market growth in general. That's what you've seen across the board. That is what you will see moving forward across any sectors. Let's face it, way back in 2005, Bombay had not more than 10 departures per day each way. Today it's sitting at 55. The peak of Bombay was about 70 departures per day each way pre-COVID. So clearly, as you add capacity, there is growth that you will witness. Your action versus a competitor's action is something which you simulate by definition. Because, and it's important you simulate that, because you need to have plan A, plan B, plan C, and more importantly, you need to sell the network. The moment you get to know that despite a 40% or a 50% or a 20% increase in capacity over and above what you have inducted, there is going to be the ability for the market to absorb the capacity, you move forward. So those factors play an extremely critical role as you get into these specific destinations that you fly into.
Right.
And let's face it, I mean, we are 24 aircraft new today. We keep adding. Competition can keep coming after us. But when you get that scale and size, you start hurting yourself. Because if your intent is to hurt somebody, you start hurting yourself. Clearly, that's not a great strategy to follow, quite frankly. But who are we to judge that strategy? Our strategy is very clear. We strongly believe India has huge growth potential. 4% of the population is traveling. This number has to go up to 10%, which is 2.5x. Over the next 10 years, the capacity is going to grow only by 1.5, 1.8x at max 2x. Right. Which essentially means we will always be ahead of the game when it comes to the demand versus supply.
Got it.
And that's what we're banking on.
Got it. But, and you've been asked, I'm sure, the duopoly question several times, but I'll just simplify it and ask you, would you call yourself a victim of predatory pricing sometime, or are you strong enough now to sort of fight back with your own?
I would say absolutely not. We don't consider ourselves victims in any way.
Yeah, sure.
Let me just be very clear.
Targets then?
We're not at all. Not at all. Neither.
Not at all. In fact, the trends that we see, Anirban, on the fares, on the maturity that this market is showing up is just remarkable. I remember the days, pre-COVID days, the kind of price war and the predatory pricing that used to happen versus what we're seeing today. It's so much more mature. The conversations that you're having with the trade, for example, is around push the fares up. The conversations with the trade historically used to be just dump the price, just give the lowest fare, just give the cheapest. People have realized over a period of time that this industry cannot sustain at certain levels, and more importantly, let's face it, Feb 2020 versus August 2021, and I keep giving this example all the time, 3,200 departures a day domestic is sitting at 3,000 departures today. The number of seats have gone up, yes, but clearly the CAGR over a period of 4.5 years is about 1.52%. So there is so much of pent-up demand that's coming, and the catch-up game happens only in about 7 to 8 years, even if you see the lineup of all the aircraft coming in. So there is no reason why somebody would get into predatory pricing, and that's exactly what we're seeing. Nobody's doing it.
Sure. Where do you see the next phase of growth coming, locally as well as internationally?
The combination of both. There's no...
These are stock questions I have to ask.
No, absolutely, absolutely. So I think domestically you're going to see us add more to our existing destination set. Domestically, you'll see us bring on new destinations, and the same internationally. And these are things we just can't signal, meaning that we can't tell you it's going to be A, B, C, or D, because it's not. Yeah. On your previous question, I'll say that while the answer for us was very emphatically, we don't feel we're a victim or a target of anything, I do want to say that, as a consumer in India, in aviation, I think we're still getting, an extremely, a good deal when it comes to airline pricing. So I think that there is sufficient competition where the consumers really continue to enjoy, relative to any other aviation geography, continue to enjoy extremely affordable fares. And at Akasa, we are also very, very proud to be part of an industry that provides these affordable fares for the consumers, because we think, as any economy, thrives as a result of very strong transportation links, and so we're very happy to contribute in that manner.
Right.
And that comes through very affordable, fares that allow people to fly.
Right. So coming to capacity increase, you've consistently said that 50% capacity increase is what you plan, but you aim for, I think, this fiscal.
This fiscal 50%.
Yes. And capacity increase would obviously mean ASK, but perhaps not the amount of aircraft that you had planned to add. So what is the solution? Just higher utilization? And would you give me numbers?
No, I think from a utilization perspective, we're north of 13 already.
That's
13 hours. I just want to make sure, because, this is a number that we have not necessarily, articulated in this direct manner in the past. And so people have tried to make calculations, etc. So I just want to come out and say that, if people were to make calculations in the month of August, we're north of 13 hours already. So our growth is not going to come any more through increased utilization. We think we're utilizing the aircraft plenty already, right? I don't think there's any best practice that says on a network that has a stage of about 11, 12, 1300 kilometers, you can use your aircraft 14, 15, 16 hours. That's not, your reliability suffers.
Sure.
So having a daily utilization in the 13.25, 13.5 hour range, which is approximately where we are, we're north of 13, I think for us is a reasonably steady state set of aircraft utilization. So it's going to come from now on. It's going to come through through adding additional aircraft.
Okay, but then, so you're hamstrung there to an extent, because
I would not call us hamstrung. Like I said, from an aircraft delivery perspective and a growth perspective, the choices we're facing is, do we grow at 300% or 270%, right? And that's the growth that we had, in the previous fiscal year. This year it's 50% versus 60% versus 40% versus 80%. So, when we're growing faster than any other airline in India, on a percentage basis, when we have grown faster than any other airline in the world ever, I wouldn't call that hamstrung, right? So if Usain Bolt were to run 9.68...
No, in relation to your own estimate.
No, I understand. But I just want to put things in perspective. So when Usain Bolt runs at 9.68%, someone may call him hamstrung because he's done 9.58%. But let us for a minute say it's 9.68. It's still faster than literally anybody else in the world has run. Maybe 9.67 is the second fastest, right? But you get my point, which is at some point we have to compare what we are doing in our future and our growth relative to what anyone has ever done before or anyone is doing today. And that's the part I want to stay focused on, because that's a very, very exciting future, Anirban.
And how small the base was, right? Initially, you're talking about a very small base.
Sure.
And as you keep growing, 50% back-to-back in 2 consecutive years from a deployment standpoint is big. Because we started off with the first 5 or 6 aircraft. and then now you're sitting at 24 and talking about these kind of growth. So it's significant, but yes, in the scheme of things, if you grow year one at 300%, year two and year three at 50 and 50%, it comes across as a small number. But by no means is it small, and by no means is it coming at the back of what Vinay talked about, 11, 12 hours utilization. No, it's north of 13 on a consistent basis. And the good part is, given that we have made our foray into international, it really enables us to utilize the asset even more. Because mind you, a lot of these international destinations are evening out, morning ins, which means you pretty much have the window of opportunity available to utilize the asset profitably across the day and night. And that makes it even more interesting for us. It becomes even more lucrative for us as an airline.
Right. No, but yeah, sure. But when you have a supplier whose problems aren't going to go away very soon. In fact, I was just reading about another electrical component problem that they're having now. They call it a non-conforming element. NTSB has said something very uncomplimentary about Boeing. So, fine, you're a great customer, but there is no amount of contingency that will take all of this into account, that can take all of this. So one part of your drawing board must be fluid right now, right? I mean, you must have had to change some stuff of your planning when this has come in, intrinsically changing, right?
Yeah. So Anirban, I'll tell you, people think, and I'll give you an analogy over here. People think that we have irregular operations once every 5 days, once every 20 days, once every 3 months. But the fact is, most airlines of any size have irregular operations every single day.
Every single day,
right?
Yeah.
Life is full of irregular operations. So when you talk about changing the drawing board, we're changing the drawing board every day for a variety of reasons. That's the point of being nimble. That's the point of being non-complacent, right? We're not complacent at all. We're nimble. But the strategic direction that the company is taking on the base that we have built is not changing, right? So we have got a 226, aircraft order, the most sort of modern fuel efficient jets. We bought them, as you know, at a time where the economics of purchasing these aircraft were in our favor. And, the same thing goes for this modern jet and engine maintenance. And that's 70% of our economics. So 70% of our economics were cemented at perhaps the most opportune time in the 120-year history of aviation, right? That's the base we're setting on. Everything else, these are minor deviations here and there that we're happy to deal with. None of these are...
but they'll remain for a year at least, no?
But and this is where, where I want to convey that what remains for us, you can choose to look at one element remaining, but what remains for us is high double-digit growths.
Yeah, sure.
Right? And that's the part we're focused on, because that's the part that's very consistent with the future that India has to offer. That's the part that's very consistent with the base that we built. So we're, the rest of it are sort of tactical forays that we have here and there. That's not deviating from really the strategic direction or the foundation that we have built.
Right. But you must be asking really tough questions to Boeing. What are they telling you? I know this is between you and Boeing. That's what
and there's some things between us and Boeing, but I want to say that, we ask ourselves as many tough questions as we ask our suppliers all the time. That's part of our culture.
Regardless.
And if we don't ask ourselves these tough questions, that's when complacency sits in.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
And so, absolutely, we're in very, very deep touch with Boeing. I'll say they're a good partner to Akasa, right? There's nothing on the air that I'm going to say about Boeing other than the fact that they're good partners to Akasa. And they've helped us get to this point. And together, we will deliver the future that I think India deserves in terms of another, high quality airline that'll make, all Indians proud.
Right. You've recently said that you don't need to hire anymore as of now because you have...
From pilot's perspective, very specific.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Pilot's perspective. But could it turn into flab going forward?
When you say flab?
Excess pilots that need to be trimmed.
Absolutely not. So we will not be trimming. Let me put that, right out there. That has never been a thought, and that is not going to happen, right? So we are not thinking even remotely about trimming. All we're thinking now is how do we get each one of the pilots that we have through their training regime and online, right? So unequivocally, no.
Right. You've sort of aired fairly terse, straightforward comments on bilaterals and what's the sort of the fact that it's not open as it used to be, etc. And how will airlines grow if bilaterals are not opened up more? There's enough and more demand for both sides to add capacity. First of all, am I correct, or do you want me to?
I have not. I hope people haven't viewed my comments as being terse. I'll sort of reiterate what I said, and what I said was that. Look, bilaterals are really decisions that our government makes. Bilaterals are not, certainly things that airlines make. These decisions are not that straightforward when you're making government-to-government decisions. They have large, multifold ramifications. And what I said was that I fully trust, our government to be able to balance the imperative that they have in their trade negotiations with the very specific effect that a bilateral right is going to have, expanding or not expanding, on consumers. So I have not gone beyond that, Anirban, and I maintain it today. Right? I mean, I am not at the table negotiating bilaterals between India and another country.
Yeah.
Our government is, and I fully support the direction that we're moving in.
But do you feel, I won't use the word hamstrung again, but do you feel constrained in terms of the ambitions that you have in certain sectors that you're not able to go to because
See, our
limits?
ambitions aren't in certain sectors. Our ambition is as an airline as a whole.
Yeah.
So if one sector is full, we've got 50 others to fly to. We
Sure.
never feel hamstrung. We never feel victimized. We never feel hamstrung because, the part that we want to convey is the Indian economy has fired and will continue to fire in a manner that, literally the world is our oyster. There's no sense that if this, sector is full, what are we going to do? No, we'll fly to many more. I mean, look at the fact that in the month of August, month that we're currently, almost 20%, shy of 20% of our network is international, right? We've gone from 0 to almost 20% in the month of our second sort of anniversary. How can anyone call that constrained? Right? So absolutely not. There's no sense of constraint just because the opportunities are so great. And by the way, it's not just for Akasa. The opportunity is great for everyone. This is not a zero-sum game.
Right. I mean, when you speak of opportunities and the constraints that I spoke of are obviously in taking advantage of those opportunities with capacity, with the opportunities to fly more because of bilateral agreements. So you don't find any of those, either of those constraining you are coming in the way of taking advantage of those opportunities.
At this point of time, no.
You can't build a strategy based on plan A and hope for only plan A to work, right? You create plan A, plan B, plan C, and multiple plans as you build. Secondly, the aircraft order of 226 is not based on we can only fly them if we get X percentage of international. Understand what's happened in India. Between 2014 to today, doubled the number of airports, and in the next 4 years, crossed the 200 mark. That's significant for a country. The amount of infrastructure growth that we are seeing as a country, I don't think anybody is witnessing this worldwide. And we are a developing nation. 4 to 5% of the population actually takes to the sky. Domestic is a equally big market. And like I said, in our consideration set, it's not look domestic and international. It's the pool. And then you prioritize. And clearly, if Kuwait is constrained or Doha is constrained, we make an application to say, please open up. We would like to fly. That's it. Nothing beyond that. But there are options available within domestic as well. So clearly, the way the path is being laid out for the industry, it's not like, okay, Dubai is not available, oh, we are constrained. Kuwait is not available, we are constrained, or Doha is not available, we are constrained. Yeah, we may be constrained, but you have something deployed. Maximize the utilization there.
Sure.
Continue to work with the government to see if we can help build these bilaterals, and then look at other areas, because let's face it, if the industry starts looking at this as, oh, I'm hamstrung because of A or B or C, then the whole growth story that we're talking about is a hogwash, and it's not. It's just the beginning of a great story this country is going to narrate when it comes to the industry, and which is why we are not concerned about one constraint or the other. It's only going to get better.
I think, Anirban, what we're trying to convey is that our thinking at Akasa is actually not confined to 6 months, 12 months, 1 year, or 2 years. Our view is, if you look at what Akasa is going to look like in 2030, 31, 32, that's where our eye is set in building an airline that really has that length of time in mind. And when you're looking at that length of time, everything's going to open up. There's not a single market that's not going to have expanded bilaterals. Not one. Right? And we'll be there at the time those bilaterals open up. And there's also not a single market in India that's not going to virtually double in size in that time frame. So when we have that kind of lens, there's plenty you can do in between.
Got it. What's your split right now, revenue-wise, between domestic and international, if I may ask?
That's not something we publish.
Okay.
That's not something we publish.
But it has to be less than 10%.
So in the month of August, we have shy of 20% of our ASKs deployed internationally. And know that international tends to hold up better when it comes to unit revenues. So that's something that we'll put out there, but we don't provide further splits.
Right, but is there a split that you are targeting that you want to share?
No, and the reason there isn't, it goes back to the way Praveen answered the first question, on how we do network planning.
Right.
It's all driven by, chasing, long-term profitability, right? And so if more domestic tends to be more profitable, that's where we go. If more international tends to be more profitable, that's where we go. So we don't have these, hard-coded targets that we're trying to achieve. The good news with us is our assets are movable. We go here or there.
And it also comes down to what's going on, right? And I can talk about this. We have the rights to a destination. That's Dhaka. We were planning to launch Dhaka. There were a lot of discussions internally, let's go ahead with it. But we just pushed it aside given what's happening in Bangladesh.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So these are, at the end of the day, if A doesn't happen, we have a B. If B doesn't happen, we have a C.
What's the B for Dhaka? I mean, is there a...
Those are things we can't signal. But Anirban, I think, from a long-term perspective, which is why we don't sweat, 1 month, 1 week. What we're building really is an airline that is financially robust. We're building an airline that has a financial foundation that allows us to think in that manner. Right? I mean, if we were living sort of a hand-to-mouth existence, we'd be giving you very different answers.
Yeah.
Right? Because we'd have to worry about next quarter. We'd have to worry about the quarter after. So I think that the trick for us, or not the trick, but the ability for us to think longer term and not really sweat the short term is because we built this financial foundation. Right? Because we've got the cash position that we have. It's because we've got the economics of the 70% that I was saying, the fuel, the ownership cost, the maintenance, right? And it's that financial foundation that we have built today that allows us to think the way we do, which is very different. I mean, not everyone has that luxury to think long term. We do. And we do because of the financial foundation that we
Sure. And let me come to that, because that's a great segue to my next one. You're right. I mean, your balance sheet's like really clean and, it's very straight. One thing that I wanted to confirm, this may be edited or just my confusion, the 375 crore infusion that I see in FY22, is that the original one you got?
Yeah, that's the only one we have. It's the only one we have. And let me tell you that by the end of July, so it's the 14th of August today, right? So I'm giving you a 14-day-old statistic. We had more than that in terms of cash in our bank account, right? So when I talk about financial foundation, think about that. We've been operating for 2 years and we have not touched a penny of that investment, right? That is the financial foundation I'm talking about.
In fact, you've made some investments in mutual funds, etc. I mean, you're clearly
I hope our Treasury Department is busy. We don't have Ankur here, but yeah, our Treasury Department has to be busy.
So, and that's how you're funding your losses as well. I mean, obviously.
Yeah, 100%. There's no doubt. I mean, every early stage company has losses. There's no doubt about that, right? But look at the fact that our EBITDA percentage has gone, up by 30%. Look at the fact that our unit profitability is up 60% year over year, right? So losses are one thing. But like I said, there's no airline in the history of aviation that has generated as much cash in its first 2 years as Akasa has. Right? Because we've grown with brand new aircraft. We've grown with these aircraft that come with sale and leaseback gains on the backs of a fantastically negotiated and opportunistic price. Right? So we're generating the cash to back our ambition. And that's what allows us to think long term.
When would you be comfortable in sharing with me a target year of making money?
When we've done it. But what I can tell you is that we are far ahead of our plans and we're on pace with the best companies in the world in terms of when we, expect to cross that mark, right? And until that time, we're just fine and comfortable because we're well ahead of our plan. So nothing that's happening is something that is either unplanned or unanticipated. In fact, we're doing better.
Right. Last question to you. Given the fact that airline models are changing so much around us, right? IndiGo is going into the hybrid thingy. People are spending a lot more than they usually did on airline tickets. You said predatory pricing is actually a thing of the past because the appetite is so much and the willingness to pay as well. If we don't take costs, and we have to take costs, of course, is the definition of a low-fare carrier like yourselves, is it changing in India?
See, first, I would not want to put any labels on us because I think it belies the work that, our 4,000 employees have done. I want to start with just looking at the experience we provide, our consumers, because I think when we start putting labels on fare and cost, etc., it really detracts from what Akasa's, providing consumers and the feedback that we're getting from them. We're told our seats are better and more comfortable. And that's right because we've actually invested for an extra inch of, cushion. So we got a butt-friendly seat. We're told we have more leg room. That's correct. We've got a knee-friendly seat, Today we don't have USB ports in every seat, but very soon we'll have USB ports. Very soon, it may take a little longer than very soon because of some supply chain constraints related to these USB plugs. So it may take another year for us to have, every seat, but a number of our seats today have USB ports and device holders. We've got brand new aircraft that come with, lower sort of noise, which come with better air quality, better pressurization, so people feel less tired when they get on the other end. Our food is getting rave reviews, and more than anything, it is the kindness and empathy displayed by our employees that is catching the attention of people, right? I mean, people are associating words like kind with us, empathetic and considerate with us.
Which is not usually associated with the global low-cost airline.
That's correct, which is why we don't like putting labels, right? The fares we provide are going to be affordable. The fares we provide are going to be affordable, and competitive with any carrier at any time. But where we will separate ourselves, Anirban, is in our customer experience, right? When people want to fly with us, irrespective of the fare, that's when we know we're going to do a good job, and that's the path that we're headed.
Sure. So, okay. So, Akasa, you don't want to label yourself a low-cost airline or a budget airline, but my question also was broader. Is the definition itself changing when you look at Indian aviation?
I don't, so Indian aviation, I mean, we don't have 35 data points to start looking at trends, right? Each airline is choosing its own path. So what one airline is doing, and they may be changing, as you've said, where they came from, but that's their choice.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't think there are enough, data points to be able to say is something changing or not. All we can do is to say what we are focused on. We're focused on the customer experience.
Right.
The affordability will come. No matter what, the affordability comes from just the economics that we've built. Right? But where our true focus is every single day is making sure that we continue to be India's most on-time airline. So we were number one in on-time performance in April, May, and June, number 2 in July, although data is not out. We expect to be number 2, and we're number 1 for the, for 13 days of August, right? So dependability is very essential to our consumers, and then the kindness and empathy that goes along with it. That's where we're focused on.
Vinay, Praveen, thank you so much for joining us on the Morning Brief.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you so much, Anirban.